We bring you a powerful address from the Senate floor, California Senator Alex Padilla, a former Secretary of State and one of the Democratic Party's most vocal critics of the Trump administration's immigration enforcement. It's a demand for something this White House seems determined to deny: the rule of law. This is what resistance sounds like from inside the Capitol.
I join my colleagues that have spoken in really saying my heart goes out to my colleagues from Minnesota, both the senior and the junior senator, and the people of Minnesota for what they have been through these last few weeks and how they have responded these last few weeks as they've mourned and as the country's been watching. January 7th feels like so long ago now, but just a few weeks ago is a day that I never would have imagined. That day, Renee Nicole Good, a mother, a daughter, a poet, was out in her community, observing, helping to document, as allowed by the law, what was happening when she was alerted about these ongoing indiscriminate raids in her community. As several of my colleagues have spoken, the administration's response to the federal agents killing Renee Good was not one of, whoa, hold on, let's really assess what's happened here. It was one of blaming her. The response was so faulty by the administration. Forget the investigations that should have taken place, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But when the President of the United States and the Vice President of the United States respond to an incident like that by messaging to federal agents, don't worry, you have complete immunity. First of all, that's not true. Second of all, it's the opposite of the message that we should be sending if we're trying to de-escalate tensions and make sure that law enforcement abides by the law. And I remind us of that because, sadly, it is not shocking when we reflect on what happened on January 24th. This time, Alex Jeffrey Padilla, a son and an ICU nurse at the local Veterans Administration hospital, was out lawfully, peacefully observing and helping document more of this ICE and CBP activity in Minneapolis. And he was shot in the back and killed. 2 United States citizens dead at the hands of federal law enforcement in the span of 2.5 weeks. They're dead because ICE and CBP have been encouraged by the White House to act with impunity. Colleagues, it was about 7 months ago that I stood here on the floor to warn all of you and the American people that the Trump administration at the time, so this will go back to last June, the Trump administration was using Los Angeles as a test case, testing how far federal agents could go in this indiscriminate, increasingly violent and cruel mass detention and deportation agenda, how far they could go before exporting this model throughout the country. I never in my life have wanted to say more than I do today that I wish I was wrong. But for the better part of the past year, communities across the country have been subjected to this relentless aggression. Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Portland, Charlotte, and others, and now Minneapolis. You've seen the videos. I've seen the videos. We've all seen the videos. How dare this administration slander the names of the dead and tell the American people not to believe what we can all see so clearly with our own eyes? How dare this administration act as if the laws passed by this body do not apply to them? And so, yes, colleagues, it is time to say enough. This is not just about immigrant families and immigrant communities now living in fear. This is about all of us. No one in this country, immigrant, citizen, veteran, should fear for their life, for exercising their constitutional rights, for standing up for their neighbors. This is not a political or policy disagreement about immigration. This is about decency. This is about humanity. And this is about the rule of law. Now, instead of pursuing independent investigations and seeking to hold officers accountable when and as warranted, this administration has doubled down. Let me take a moment on this, because our colleague, Senator Kane from Virginia, talked a little bit about his experience as governor and mayor and what normally happens after an officer-involved shooting. Normal practice, standard practice, best practice after an officer-involved shooting in a local agency, in a state agency. It's not just the officer being placed on leave, but initially there's an administrative review of what happened. Was it not just consistent with policy, but the law and the Constitution? And if not, what is the consequence? Absent that, under normal circumstances, we have a civil rights division of the United States Department of Justice that can conduct an independent investigation and bring forth accountability as and when warranted. Sadly, that is not the case with this administration. Not the objective internal review, not a civil rights division of the Department of Justice review. Instead, they tell officers, you have complete immunity, and they double down. And so the abuse has continued. And by the way, it's not just on the streets. The videos you have not seen is the abuse and inhumane treatment that continues inside some appalling and inhumane private detention facilities, where, colleagues, if you haven't heard, 32 detainees died last year, the most deadly year for those in ICE detention facilities in a long, long time. And an additional 6 this month alone. We're already on track to exceed last year's most deadly number. Talk about the people held in detention centers like the one that Senator Schiff and I visited just last week in California City. Many there being denied basic medical care, even urgent medical care. People denied easy access to legal counsel, to due process, to fundamental dignity. And what has the Republican majority in Congress, how have they responded to this cruel and vindictive mass deportation campaign? Silence. Inexcusable or unacceptable silence. And for those who have not been silenced, I've heard cheering on of what the administration is doing. Colleagues, since last July, there's been dozens of incidents involving excessive force by federal agents, including at least 17 shootings. Instead of asking questions and demanding accountability, our Republican colleagues here have applauded the administration and chosen to give the Department of Homeland Security billions more dollars. And now they're suggesting that DHS needs even more. How much more must our communities and our country endure before our Republican colleagues join us in saying enough? How much more, colleagues, before you agree to impose the real guardrails on a DHS that chooses to investigate itself, that stonewalls oversight, that even fights court orders to preserve evidence in the killing of an American citizen? Not destroying evidence should go without saying. It should be compelled by a federal judge, just like true, objective, independent investigations after incidents like this should go without saying. But we're not living in normal times. We continue to see ICE and CBP behave as though they are above the law. And because this administration has told them they are, and because Republicans in Congress have not told them that they're not. But we have an opportunity to change them, to collectively, on a bipartisan and bicameral basis, let those agents know no one is above the law. That is not just an opportunity, but an obligation that we have in this moment. Public safety depends on legitimacy, and legitimacy depends on accountability and speaking the truth. Our laws mean nothing if those that are assigned to enforce the laws believe that the laws don't apply to them. And so, colleagues, let's realize that we are not powerless in this conversation. Congress is a co-equal branch of government in the United States of America, and it's about time we act like it. That's why I support imposing serious reforms, real oversight, and accountability on ICE and CBP before this body provides them any more taxpayer dollars. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield back.
I recognize the senator from Rhode Island.
Senator Padilla's words carry a weight that transcends politics. Two American citizens, Renee Nicole Good and Alex Jeffrey Pruddy, are dead, not in a war zone, not in a foreign land, but on American streets, killed by American federal agents while exercising rights guaranteed by the American Constitution. And what has been the response from the executive branch? Not an investigation. Not accountability, not even a pause. Instead, the President and Vice President of the United States sent a message that should alarm every citizen regardless of political affiliation: complete immunity. Let us be clear about what that means. It means that the White House has effectively told federal law enforcement that there will be no consequences, that the badge is a blank check, that the uniform is above the law it was sworn to uphold. Senator Padilla reminded us of something this administration seems eager to forget: that 7 months ago, he stood on that very floor and warned that Los Angeles was a testing ground. That what we were witnessing was not policy, it was a rehearsal. A rehearsal for a nationwide campaign of, in his words, indiscriminate, increasingly violent and cruel mass detention. He warned us, and now Minneapolis is paying the price. But perhaps the most damning element of today's address was not directed at the White House. It was directed at his Republican colleagues. The silence, as Padilla put it, is inexcusable and unacceptable. And he's right, because silence in the face of injustice is complicity. Silence, when citizens are killed without accountability, is endorsement. 32 detainees died in ICE facilities last year, the deadliest year on record. 6 more have died this month alone. These are not statistics. These are human beings. Mothers, fathers, sons, daughters. People whose only crime, in many cases, was seeking a better life or simply being in the wrong place when federal agents decided the Constitution didn't apply to them. And yet, instead of demanding answers, Congress has handed the Department of Homeland Security billions more in funding. Billions, with no guardrails, no oversight, no accountability. Senator Padilla closed with a reminder that should echo through every corridor of power in Washington. Congress is a co-equal branch of government. It is not a rubber stamp. It is not a cheerleading squad. It has the power and the obligation to check executive overreach. The question now is whether his colleagues will listen, whether they will choose country over party, whether they will remember that the Constitution they swore to defend does not have an asterisk that says, except when politically inconvenient. Because if they don't, if this administration continues unchecked, then what happened in Minneapolis will not be an aberration. It will be a precedent. And history, as it always does, will remember who spoke up and who stayed silent. This is not about immigration policy. This is about whether America remains a nation of laws. And right now, that question hangs in the balance. For those watching, I leave you with Senator Padilla's own words. Our laws mean nothing if those assigned to enforce them believe the laws don't apply to them.